Well, welcome to Rugby Borough Council's Planning Committee meeting this Wednesday the 7th of February. I'm Councillor Tony Gillies, the chairman of this committee. The meeting is being web streamed to the public through the Council's YouTube channel. During the meeting, when asked to speak, please use the push to talk button on the microphone in front of you. This will allow the camera to pan in your general direction and everyone to hear you. Before we begin the formal agenda, I'm obliged to read out the following fire notice. There is no fire drill scheduled in the building this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, then please could I ask you to make your way out of the building, down the main staircase and out of the main doors of the Town Hall and congregate at the entrance to Coulter Yacht Park, which is on the left. An officer of the Council will give instructions on when it is safe to return to the building. Moving on to the agenda, the first item is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of January. All those in favour, please show. Okay, and that approves the minutes for the 10th of January. Second item is to receive apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
I have apologies, Chair, from Councillor Lawrence.
And our thoughts are with Councillor Lawrence at this time, at his sad loss. Third item, to declarations of interest. To receive declarations of interest as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors. Non-pecuniary, I'll start from the Chair as the Ward Councillor for all three applications. Any further non-pecuniaries?
Sorry, yes, myself. On R231075, which is 263A Rugby Road, as I'm the Ward Councillor. On Lenton's Lane, as I am the Ward Councillor, apparently. And on R230211, as on a previous occasion, I spoke in favour of this application. And so I think I've predetermined myself because I think I left you all in no doubt how I felt about that application and the fact that actually it was definitely the sort of application that we should be supporting at this council.
So that is actually...
That's definitely predetermined.
Okay,
I've predetermined myself, so I do realise I've got to vacate.
Okay, that's fine.
Could I just please put on record how fantastic the officer has been? He really has gone out of his way to help with this application, and I know that the applicant and myself can't thank him enough for that.
Okay, don't say too much, otherwise he'll be seeking a rise. So, okay. Thank you. Any non-pecuniaries? No, and then C, notice under Section 106 Local Government Finance Act, 1992, non-payment of community charge. I know we have to say these things. We're all okay. We're all clear. Okay, before we move on to item 4, which is determination of the three applications we've got before us, we will just run over the rules and regulations. First of all, the order in which each item will be dealt with. The planning officer will speak first and present the application. The committee will be asked if they have any points of clarification from the officer. The representatives for the objectors, the applicants, and then the ward councillor, if there is one, will each be invited to speak in turn. The planning officer can address any material issues arising from speakers' comments and accept questions from councillors. Any ward councillor or councillor who speaks on an application as part of the public speaking process shall leave the meeting once all speakers have completed their presentations relating to it. The committee will then go into debate on the application, asking relevant questions of the planning officer if necessary. A formal recommendation will be made and voted on. The rules for public speaking. Speakers will have 3 minutes to make their representation. They'll be warned by a short alarm when they have 30 seconds left, and then further alarm will sound when their time has expired. Their presentation should then be brought to a halt. No extra time will be allowed. All speakers should direct their presentations to amplifying the planning matters they have previously put to us for the benefit of the committee. Speakers should resist restrict their comments to material planning considerations only, and any non-planning issues will be disregarded. Speakers should not introduce any additional information that has not previously been brought to the planning authority's attention, i.e. introduce late items that have not been suitably considered by officers and properly addressed in the officer's report to the committee for councillors' deliberation. No visual aids or handouts may be used, and no questions to officers or councillors will be allowed. No members of the public are allowed to take part in the debate once their presentation has been given. Okay, in that case then we'll move over to you and present the first one for us.
Thank you. R230211 at Autumn Farm, Easton Hall Road, Harbour Magna. This application was previously put to the committee in October of last year. The proposal seeks the conversion of an existing agricultural barn into one dwelling, use class C3. So this application was called to be determined by the planning committee by Councillor Garcia during the 21-day statutory consultation period. So in terms of the site location and the characteristics, the site is located approximately 0.6 miles west of the village of Harbour Magna and 0.3 miles to the south of Easton Hall. The farmstead comprises of a dwelling house and a collection of agricultural and equine buildings. The application barn is situated circa 45 metres from the main farmhouse. The farm is accessed from a small track and public bridleway which extends off Easton Hall Road, and the application site is located within the Rugby Coventry Green Belt. So with regards to the existing building, the building is a steel frame Joe pitch structure with an adjoining lean-to structure built on the west elevation. The front of the building, the southern elevation, is mainly open and faces a small courtyard area which overlooks fields to the south. The remainder of the building's perimeter comprises of a blockwork wall with a weatherproof steel sheeting connecting the blockwork to the eaves of the structure, and the barn structure sits upon a relatively natural base. And they are the site photos as current. So with regards to the proposal details, the proposal seeks the conversion of an existing barn to provide a 3-bedroom unit. Additions are proposed to the south and west elevation in order to provide an enclosed structure. Windows and pedestrian openings are proposed throughout. The proposed red line residential curtilage would include a garden and amenity area to the side and front of the dwelling. This will be demarcated by a 1.2 metre high open post and rail fence, details of which will be agreed prior to commencement subject to the application being approved. There are also 2 parking spaces proposed to the front of the unit. So to visualise what I've just gone through, these are the proposed plans. As you can see, the proposal seeks to enclose the current structure with windows and doors proposed throughout. Again, with the floor plans as well. Ground floor, then 3 bedrooms on the first floor. So in terms of the consultation responses, no objections were received from technical consultees subject to conditions. One thing to note, there was a neighbour objection received. However, this was not directly related to the application proposal itself. However, did raise concerns to the LPA that there was an unlawful static caravan on the site, which is currently lived in. However, this matter has been passed on to the enforcement team and the case will be part of a separate retrospective application and not directly related to this proposal. So moving on to the key considerations. As I previously mentioned, this application was previously put to the committee in October of last year. However, since then, the applicant has claimed that the conversion of the barn is required in order for the existing occupiers of the main farmhouse to remain on the site. Since the last time the application was at committee, the applicant has provided the LPA with evidence of personal special circumstances which they state clearly show the requirement for the conversion of the barn for additional living facilities. This evidence has been reviewed and considered and identified the following. 2 occupiers of the main farmhouse have complex medical needs that require regular medical intervention and ongoing support. And both of these 2 occupiers are the immediate family of the applicant who proposes to live in the proposed barn conversion. In support of what I've just mentioned, the LPA have been provided with letters from medical specialists, care providers and educational establishments in order to substantiate the applicant's claim. The evidence confirms the severity of that alleged. Whether the special circumstances outweigh any harm of the development will be appropriately addressed in the following section. So with regards to the principle of the development, As mentioned, the site is located in the Greenbelt, where residential development is usually resisted. However, NPPF paragraph 155D states that the reuse of buildings within the Greenbelt is acceptable. However, such building should be of a permanent and substantial construction. The applicant has demonstrated this by providing a structural survey which had positive findings. Therefore, the proposal to adapt the structure is supported under paragraph 155D of the NPPF. The application is not proposing any changes to the overall footprint or massing of the existing building, and therefore the impact on the Greenbelt is limited, as it only proposes to enclose the current structure. However, converting to a residential use could have future implications and associated impacts on the Greenbelt's openness. Therefore, should an approval be forthcoming, Condition 12 and 13 in the draft decision notice will aim to remove permitted development rights and ensure a long-term protection of the Greenbelt following any residential conversion. So moving on to the sustainability assessment and its location. As I mentioned, the site is outside of any defined settlement boundary. Therefore, due to the lack of a pedestrian infrastructure between the site and the nearby settlements of Harbour Magna and Easenhall, the services which they provide cannot be fully utilised on foot. This then triggers the argument for the sustainability of the development and its subsequent impact on the environment. The 85 and 85B bus route, however, is in close proximity to the site and provides links to Rugby and Coventry. The nearest bus stop for this route is circa 440 metres from the site entrance. However, is not connected to the site by safe walking infrastructure. However, on the balance of probability, due to how close the bus stop is to the proposal site, it could still be used by potential occupiers. However, in order to mitigate any conflict with sustainability and any impact on the environment, Condition 15 in the draft decision notice will limit the dwelling to a personal use of the applicant only, unless further permission is obtained from the LPA. Therefore, the impact on the environment above the existing levels on the site from the main farmhouse will be minimal. So, with regards to character and design of the proposal, Local Plan Policy SDC1 states that development will only be supported where the proposals are of scale, density and design that responds to the character of the areas in which they are situated. The unit proposes circa 153 square metres of ground floor space and 80 square metres at first floor level in the mezzanine area. This providing a total of 233 square metres of residential floor space. As you've seen from the plans, the design is basic, however functional for the proposed use. The unit proposes a private garden space in order to provide a suitable level of amenity for future occupiers. Therefore, the application is considered to be in accordance with SDC 1 of the local plan and Section 12 of the NPPF. So, with regards to the impact on residential amenity, Policy SDC 1 and Section 12 of the NPPF states that development will ensure that the living conditions of the existing and the future neighbouring occupiers are safeguarded. The unit is located circa 45 metres from the main farmhouse. The alterations proposed in this scheme would not cause any additional loss of light, overbearing impact or privacy implications to the main farmhouse to an acceptable level. Therefore, it is considered that this aspect of the application is in accordance with SDC 1 of the local plan and Section 12 of the NPPF. So moving on to highway safety, Local Plan Policy D2 states that planning permission will only be granted for development which incorporates satisfactory parking facilities. A 3-bedroom dwelling in a low accessible area of the borough shall provide 2 off-road spaces. 2 spaces are proposed for this proposal adjacent to the barn area. Warwickshire Highways Department were also consulted and provided a stance of no objection. So with regards to biodiversity, Policy NE1 of the local plan relates to the protection and designation of biodiversity and geodiversity assets. Again, consultation with ecology provided a stance of no objection, subject to a condition. So moving on to the planning balance and the conclusion. The special medical circumstances are considered adequate to substantiate the need for the additional living accommodation for the occupiers of the main farmhouse. The scheme complies with paragraph 155D of the NPPF and will reuse an existing building in the Greenbelt. The impacts on the Greenbelt are considered to be to an acceptable level due to both the nature of the development and the conditions put forward by the LPA in the draft decision notice to remove permitted development rights. The impacts on sustainability and the conflict with policy GP1 are considered to be outweighed by the justification and the special circumstances demonstrated by the applicant. In addition to this, Condition 15 in the draft decision notice will restrict the barn to personal use only, and therefore the impacts arising from the unsustainable residential location for residential development are to an acceptable level, as only a personal permission will be granted. Therefore, the officer recommendation for this application is approval. Thank you.
Any points of clarification to the officer? Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Chair. Just about the caravan, I know it's on a different part of this another application, so could I have some more information on what's actually going on? Will that have no effect on this planning, or...?
Yeah, so that's, sorry, through you, Chair, that's nothing to do directly with this application. That was something which was raised to the LPA during the consultation period, and basically it was alleged that someone is living in that unlawfully, and it's sited on the land unlawfully as well. So that has been passed on to our enforcement team, who I'm led to believe are currently looking into it, and then that would require a subsequent retrospective application to determine whether that's lawful.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question on the personal usage. How is that sort of monitored, managed, or anything like that?
So it's condition 15 in the draft decision notice, and that the wording for that, if you bear with me. So the applicant's name is included in the condition, so it'll mean that he can only use it, obviously, and then it basically restricts the property being sold off as market housing in the future and other occupiers living on the site, because obviously the issues with sustainability were a cause for concern before, and that would then obviously be impacted if another family moved into the site compared to existing family members living there.
Any further points of clarification, or could we move straight to the debate? Okay, so we move to the debate then. Have we got any speakers? Okay, well, for those members of the public who are watching at home or in this chamber right now, both the Chair and Vice Chair have a briefing of what's going on in this meeting on a Monday. So we ask all the relevant questions so that they can be addressed at this presentation. And I think, from my perspective, I think this now ticks all the boxes, and I will move recommendation for approval from the Chair. Do I have a seconder?
Go on, I'll second it, because I think going back to October, I think you've answered the questions, the queries that we raised previously. So I'm happy to second approval on this.
Okay, have we got any further speakers? Are you all happy with that? In that case, then we'll move to the vote. It's been proposed and seconded for approval. Those in favour, please show. And for those watching on the TV, it's unanimous. Thank you. So we'll let the Councillor Garcia back into the room, as long as he knows the password to get in. We'll move over to Paul Varnish, who's going to make the presentation for us.
Thank you, Chair. This application has been reported to Planning Committee for determination because the proposed development falls within the definition of major development. There have also been more than 15 letters of objection from households residing within the locality of the application site. This application is a cross-boundary application with Coventry City Council, who are also the applicant, for a solar farm development, including solar arrays, controlled buildings and associated infrastructure, internal access roads, landscaping and associated development. The section to the left, identified within the larger circle is a part of development to be considered by Coventry City Council. The smaller area to the right, within the smaller circle, is a part of the solar farm to be considered by Rugby. The supporting information submitted refers to the solar farm in its entirety to include the Coventry and Rugby area. However, for clarification, it is only the section of solar farm within Rugby's jurisdiction that the Planning Committee are considering for determination this evening. Coventry City have yet to make a decision on their application. It will be taken to committee in the very near future. This presentation is read in conjunction with the committee report and documents submitted within the planning application. The application site is primarily agricultural land located to the west of the borough, on the shared boundary with Coventry and within the green belt. The site is currently used for agricultural purposes. Regarding the site context, to the south of the site is the M6 motorway. Beyond the motorway is a residential development, school and employment site within Coventry's boundary. To the east is the M69 motorway. To the north, the Oxford Canal and Brookfield farmhouse. The photograph illustrates the context of the site. The above photograph is an aerial view of the site. The two main fields central to the site within the red edge are where the solar panels will be located. They will utilise the existing layout. The photograph below shows the current view of agricultural fields bounded by trees and hedges. The panels will be arranged to utilise nearly the entire site within the existing field layout. Most of the equipment, to include the control building and construction compound, will be located on the Coventry site. However, two inverter containers will be located to the east and west of the Rugby site. The green line at boundary application site is a security fence. An access track will be located to the front of the site. An area to the north of the site will be retained and enhanced as an improved grassland habitat. The above provides an indication of solar panels, inverter container and boundary fence. A condition will be included for final details. The above photograph provides an idea of the solar farm layout. The space between the arrays provide the opportunity for grazing sheep or other farming activity. Regarding third-party representation, response of no comment from the Anstey Parish Council. The Council received representation from neighbouring residents in relation to the development not complying with planning policy, impact of glint and glare, loss of green belt and agricultural land, impact on residents, highway safety issues and parking, impact on landscape and character of the area, impact on biodiversity, impact on rights of way, impact on the historical character of the area and open space. The Council have also received representation that will be considered outside of the planning remit and will not be considered material planning considerations. For example, the loss of employment for the tenant farmer, the loss of value in housing and loss of internet. Another fact to consider in relation to the third-party representation is that the Coventry site is located much nearer to residential properties, for example on Lentons Lane. Some of the concerns raised by the local residents relate more to the Coventry development and not necessarily towards the Rugby development. The Local Access Forum advises the appointed authorities, to include Warwickshire County Council, Solihull Metropolitan Borough Council and Coventry City Council and other organisations, on the improvement of public access to the countryside and public right-of-way. They have provided representation, which I understand has been emailed to every member of the Planning Committee and is included within the planning addendum. Their main concerns are regarding the impact on the development on the green belt and biodiversity and not representing very special circumstances. The key issues to assess relating to the proposed development are the principle of development, design and appearance, the impact on neighbouring properties and residential amenity, impact on the green belt, landscape, the natural and historic environment and landscape, the loss of agricultural land, flood risk and drainage, access, highways, environmental health matters and the overall cumulative impact. The application site is located within the green belt where development will be resisted and should not be approved except in very special circumstances. The applicant has provided justification for the site selection to include the site being within the ownership of Coventry City Council, there being access to the national grid connection point, and the size of the land and existing layout being large enough to make the development viable. There's also opportunity to address other mitigation or enhancement to the site, for example, ecology and biodiversity and flood risk. Regarding the Greenbelt, it is considered that the level of harm is limited due to the following factors. National policy, paragraph 163 of the NPPF, states that the planning system should support the transition to a low-carbon future in a changing climate, where local planning authorities should approve the application if its impacts are or can be made acceptable. From a spatial perspective, it's accepted that the development would reduce openness by introducing a substantial number of solar panels onto previously undeveloped fields. However, the low nature of the solar panels ensure that the structures are not dominant on the landscape and will thereby minimise the visual impact on the openness of the greenbelt. The landscape and visual impact are localised to the area within the site and its immediate surroundings and will not result in any significant impact. The proposed solar farm has an operational lifespan of approximately 40 years. After this period, it will be dismantled and the site returned to its previous conditions for continued agricultural use. The harm to the openness of the greenbelt is moderate due to temporary and reversible nature and will not lead to a permanent loss of openness. The agent advised that they are not seeking to remove the site from the greenbelt, but to use land for a temporary period. The proposed development will not result in loss of the best and most versatile land, which is grade 1 or 2 agricultural land. The UK government has declared a climate emergency and set a statutory target of achieving net zero emissions by 2050. Rugby Borough Council declared a climate change emergency and highlighted its commitment to help to deliver the UK's carbon reduction targets. The proposed development will provide a maximum output of 30 megawatts and create an annual carbon saving of 7,080 tonnes of CO2 compared to traditional power generation. Although the application proposal would result in some harm to the greenbelt by reason of inappropriateness and loss of openness, it is considered that the benefits of renewable energy would outweigh the harm to the openness of the greenbelt. Furthermore, it has been demonstrated that the site meets locational restrictions, being of a sufficient size for a commercially viable solar development and in close proximity to grid connection with capacity to justify its required location in the greenbelt. Regarding the agricultural land, the applicant has provided an agricultural land classification report which demonstrates that only 32% of the land is the best and most versatile agricultural land, with the majority of the site being lower quality agricultural land. The applicant has advised that the site could be still used for agricultural use in connection with the solar farm to include either sheep grazing, keeping chickens or bees, or for planting grassland or meadows. The lead local flood authority have been consulted and have raised no objection, subject to a condition requiring the development to be built in accordance with the flood risk assessment and drainage strategy. Regarding highways initially requested additional information and amendments to the construction traffic management plan to ensure heavy good vehicles can safely access the site, to prevent vehicle congestion and to make certain that any wear and tear of the highway caused during the construction phase is repaired. Once the development phase is completed and operational, there will be very few vehicle trips to the site, mainly for the purpose of maintenance. Highways England have been consulted and provided a response of no objection. Warwickshire County Council Highways have provided a response of no objection, subject to conditions. Although there are no footpaths across the site, there are footpaths within close proximity. Public rights of way have provided a response of no objection, providing the footpaths remain open and accessible. In terms of design and residential amenity, the solar panels and associated equipment, inverter containers, fencing and CCTV cameras are of a typical design associated with this type of development and are of an acceptable size and scale. The arrays will utilise the existing layout of the site. A condition will be included for final details regarding solar panels and associated equipment. The nearest neighbouring property on the same side of the motorway is Brookfield Farm, which is at least 100 metres from the site. Other residential properties and business and industrial buildings are located beyond the M6 motorway to the south. Due to the topography of the site, the scale and massing of the development, not exceeding 3 metres in height, and the existing screening, is considered that there will be minimal visual impact on the users of the canal and towpath. At the end of the lifetime, the proposed development and infrastructure will be removed and land will be reinstated. Environmental health team were consulted and concluded that the construction environmental management plan and a contamination risk management report were both acceptable. Conditions will be included to ensure they are adhered to. The plan application is accompanied by a landscape and visual appraisal and glint and glare assessments to demonstrate the potential impact of the proposed development on the wider landscape and any potential receptors. The Council's tree and landscape officer has been consulted and has provided a response of no objection, subject to the provision of a finalised arboricultural method statement and tree protection plan. In terms of glint and glare, the application is accompanied by a glint and glare assessment which appraises the potential glint and glare effects on nearby dwellings, road users and local aviation operatives. The report concludes that solar reflections will not impact on approaching aircraft or the air traffic control towers at Coventry Airport, Birmingham Airport and Wellesbourne Mountfield Airfield. The dwellings which are greatest affected by the solar panels within the Rugby site can be viewed on the plan above. The blue area is the section of the solar farm within Rugby's jurisdiction. The grey dots indicate the nearest neighbouring properties. Properties on Shilton Lane to the northwest and across the M6 to the southwest and south. The report advises that solar reflections will not impact or only marginally impact on neighbouring properties due to not being geometrically possible, screening, panel visibility, sun position and separation distance. Regarding highways, the report concludes that due to landscaping, topography and other factors, the visibility of the panels by road users will be obstructed and there will be no or only a negligible impact. To ensure the impacts on road and canal, the towpath users is acceptable, a condition for the screening review in relation to glint and glare will be completed prior to the arrays being installed. In terms of cumulative impacts, due to the Toldish Hall solar farm being approximately 1 kilometre away and significant screening between this scheme and the receptors assessed for the proposed development, it was not considered necessary to undertake a cumulative assessment. Archaeology, Warwickshire County Council Archaeology have been consulted and advised that, as this site is likely to have been in agricultural use since at least the medieval period, there is significant archaeological potential. As a rule, archaeology would use the ASFA-agreed programme of evaluative fieldwork being taken prior to decisions have been made. However, the applicant has confirmed that should significant archaeological deposits be identified across any part of the site, then, where appropriate, construction strategies requiring no below-ground impacts will be used. For example, concrete footings. Archaeology have requested for conditions to be included for the mitigation strategy to be followed. The Warwickshire County Council Ecology team have assessed the biodiversity net gain calculation and report that accompanies the application and are of the opinion that biodiversity net gains can be achieved on site. Ecology have also requested for a landscape and ecology management plan and a detailed construction environmental management plan. Ecology have also requested for a condition for a 10-metre buffer between the canal and the works area while construction is taking place. Other matters. The Canal and River Trust are concerns regarding glint and glare impacting canal users. Glint and glare has been addressed earlier within this presentation. The Trust has requested a condition to be included to ensure the canal infrastructure is not damaged during the construction phase. Cadent Gas, the National Grid, the Coal Authority, Warwickshire Police and Warwickshire Fire and Rescue have provided a response to no objection, with a request for informative notes to be included within the decision notice. The Ramblers have provided a response of no objection. Inland Waterways, the Warwickshire Wildlife Trust and Coventry Airport were consulted but have provided no response. In terms of the planning balance, development will provide renewable energy, demonstrates very special circumstances, is sited on lower quality agricultural land, is of an acceptable design and will have minimal impact on residential amenity, retains and enhances the existing landscape, will enhance the natural environment and protects the historic environment, mitigates against flood risk and drainage, will have minimal impact on highway safety and safe access. The cumulative impact is considered acceptable and it complies with the local plan and NPPF. The recommendation is for the Planning Committee to approve the application subject to conditions and informatives and for the Chief Officer for Growth and Investment to be given delegated authority to make minor amendments to the conditions. As the site is located within the Greenbelt, if the committee are minded to approve the application will be referred to the Planning Casework Unit prior to decision being made. Thank you, Chair.
For the officer. Councillor Harrington.
Thank you. If the Coventry side gets rejected, does that affect the Rugby side? Because it's a bit weird, we're going through it now. We don't know what Coventry are doing, so I'm a bit confused of what's going on there. So could you clarify that, please?
Through you, Chair. If committee were to approve it tonight and Coventry were to refuse it, as it stands, they wouldn't be able to progress with the application. The main reason is because the connection is from the Coventry area. It would be up to them, but they would have perhaps alternatives, whether they could make the Rugby site viable. So they could do that, but it would require another application because I think there'd be so many changes that it wouldn't be, they wouldn't be able to do a variation of condition. So it would require a new application.
Thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. The comments to the Warwickshire Ecology Unit were of interest in terms of achieving biodiversity net gain on the site. Have they given any indications? I mean, are they looking at pasture land planting? Are they looking at more hedgerows? Are they looking at more trees? What have Warwickshire County Council Ecology use indicated?
Through you, Chair. Warwickshire County Council Ecology have looked at it. In the draft decision in condition 14, they've requested a landscape and ecology management plan. So the details will be submitted with them. If you look, it's quite comprehensive. Obviously, once that's agreed with, then it'll be considered to be compliant with ecology.
Would that also mitigate the visual impacts on site?
I think it could have a dual purpose. We've consulted ecology and landscaping. If I perhaps go back to one of the slides, perhaps you can't see that so well. The site itself is 2 fields. It's well landscaped around the edges. Our landscape officers looked at it and recognises this. The solar panels will be situated in the middle where at the moment there's the crops. So in terms of landscape, it's going to be well screened anyway, and there's also things like topography. The way it lies in the land, it will be visible, but like I say, it'll be well screened. It probably, because it utilises the existing field layout, it probably doesn't actually need that much.
Councillor Harrington again.
Yeah, sorry, I've got another one. Regarding grading, just reading the report here now, it says 3A 32% and 3B 41.5. So my quick maths is going to be at 73%. So, but what is the grading of that field? Is it in the grading 3? Is it the grading 4? It'd be interesting to see, because obviously if this is going to be moderate or good quality agricultural land, are we getting rid of some land which actually can be used to produce food?
Through you, Chair. Grade 3A is good quality, and that would be classed as the best and most versatile agricultural land. And so it would still, if the whole site was still the best and most versatile land, it could still, in theory, be used for a solar farm. However, the government steer you towards the agricultural land which isn't as good, which is the 3B and 4 and grade 4. So that comes out, I think. Hang
on, you'll have your chance to speak. Okay.
Yeah. So the percentages there are that like I say, it's less. It's not the best and most versatile agricultural land.
It's not answering the question though, is it? Because that field could be grade A, 3A, but do we know that or don't we know that? That's the question I was trying to answer. And if it is, then obviously it's going to be good quality land. But if it's grade 4 and you can't grow anything on it, it's going to be poor quality. That can make a difference in how people think.
Through you, Chair. So for the solar farm to be viable, it needs a certain amount of area. So some of the land is going to be the best and most versatile land. Some of it's going to be less good. So the whole entire site has been graded, and it comes out at, like I say, not best and most versatile land. So taking it in its entirety, that's what we consider. I get what you're saying, that one of those fields, the whole field could be grade 3A, or however, like I said, they could still use it to it doesn't stop it, a solar farm going on, just because it is the best and most versatile land.
Councillor Mrs Garcia.
It was just a point of clarification, but I don't. Obviously, when I've read this application beforehand, there were several letters that came in at the same time, and different bits of notification. And the one bit that I was really concerned about was the fact that the Mr. Dews, who has the tenancy on this farm, has not been given the appropriate notices by Coventry Council, and I feel that because he has got a tenancy for his lifetime with rights to succession, there's got to be some weight given to this, and I just wonder if you could just clarify what's happened and why it isn't in the report. And
yeah, through you, Chair. I have had clarification from Coventry City Council that a recorded, or the correct recorded notification was sent to Mr. Dews. This has been disputed. We've received a legal letter to say that this hasn't happened. So to ensure that to ensure that it was reserved. So it's been done twice.
Also, through you, Chair, that isn't something that's a material planning consideration in terms of, I mean, obviously the statutory process has to be followed, and I agree that that's a point, but obviously we're content that has been. But as I say, that's not something that you could obviously look at this and say, well,
if the
that's
procedure
material.
hasn't been followed, I could look at it, couldn't I?
You could, but as I say, I think your officers are saying that has been
But it
followed.
has. You're assuring me that the proper procedure has been followed.
Yeah, well, they've served twice now, I think, just in case there's a concern on that point.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, one of the things that caught my eye on the report was this for a temporary structure. Well, we've had applications for temporary structure for energy production at this council, at this committee before. They're usually sort of 25, 30 years, but I noticed this one is for a temporary structure up to 40 years. Is that really temporary?
Through you, Chair. There's probably not a definition of what temporary is. I think that the nature of it is by after the 40 years, once it's no longer in a working condition, it can be removed. I think the thing is because technology has become more advanced, it used to be for 25, 30 years. Solar panels are now lasting longer, so it makes sense to allow 40 years, because otherwise, in theory, you could be removing them to then be replacing them very soon afterwards. So I think as well, the government would support the fact that, or consider it to be a temporary structure as well. And like I say, that there are conditions in there providing that it's the land is returned to its agricultural state after the solar farm is no longer workable.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Would you mind just clarifying the glare issue from the motorway perspective for users of the motorway?
Through you, Chair. There was a report, it's the Glinton glare report. Within that report, it was felt that there was not any impact on that. National Highways have been consulted and have raised no objection to it. In terms of the solar panels, if I can try and explain, solar panels are there to absorb sunlight, they're not there to reflect sunlight. There's also other things that can be done, so the arrays the frames are on can be painted with matte paint, which isn't reflective. In terms of topography and landscaping, it can prevent it can screen it so there's no glare on it. And also as well, they can position them so so they don't reflect any. I think it's kind of found that there could be some or minimal or negligible reflection on it. However, there is a condition within the in the report that needs to be assessed prior to the decision being made.
Any further points of clarification, or can we move on to the speakers? We're all okay on that? Okay, and then we'll move on to the speakers, and our first speaker is Mr. Edward Hughes. Mr. Hughes, you've got 3 minutes, and press your microphone so it glows red. That's it, and then you far away. 3 minutes you've got.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can we just clear up this issue about best and most versatile land? 67% of the site is best and most versatile. Grades 3 and 3A. Can that be put on record? My name's Edward Hughes, and I've been tenant farmer of Lentons Lane Farm since 1967. The tenancy is regulated by the Agricultural Holding Act's conditions. If planning permission is granted for this scheme, my landlords will give me an incontestable notice to quit. This will have a catastrophic effect on my livelihood. You're being asked to determine this application, but it's only a partial scheme. There are no grid connections, there are no control buildings, it's not a standalone project. It will require Coventry to determine their planning application before a grid connection is available. Coventry City Council are the applicants, they're also the landowner and the planning authority, with total control of the whole process. In order to avoid any perception of unfair advantage, they have a duty to scrupulously follow all statutory requirements. This sadly has not been the case. It took the intervention of the Chief Executive Officer and the Head of Governance at Coventry to force planners into belatedly serving the formal notice on me as a tenant as required by statute. Again, only last week, having failed to notify objectors of the planning meeting due on the 25th of January, on the 24th, the application was deferred, but only because several formal complaints were again made to the CEO and head of governance. It appears the planner's intention was to bounce this application through under the radar with no debate and no objectors. Not one of the 6 local ward councillors has been willing to meet with residents to discuss their concerns. Even the councillor presenting a residents' petition has refused to engage with residents. This leads to the inevitable conclusion they've been warned against offering any support to objectors that may derail the project. The checks and balances required to allow local democracy to function have been completely absent for the whole of this planning process. 3 minutes is not sufficient time to list all the objections to the wider scheme, but proximity to housing causes great concern. Even after the recent minor adjustments, there are more than 60 homes only 30 metres from the nearest panel. Nowhere in the UK has planning permission been granted for a solar scheme this close to so many houses. Due to the convergence of 2 pylon lines that radiate from the site of the old Coventry power station, the background level of electromagnetic fields is already very high. With 13 inverters required for this scheme, that will raise the level substantially, yet there's no health impact assessment.
I'm ever so sorry, Mr. Hughes, but we've run out of time, I'm afraid. We've got to be fair for everybody, and everybody that comes here and speaks, 3 minutes they have. I'm ever so sorry. I think we've got a lot of the information across to the members. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to Mr. Gordon Buchanan. Sorry? Wait till I get my new glasses, it'll be all right then. 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chairman, for the opportunity to address the committee this evening. The applicant, your neighbouring local authority, is very grateful to your officers for their positive recommendation for the proposed development and notes that this positive recommendation is shared by their counterparts in Coventry as well. The design has evolved and has been extensively modified to help reduce its potential impact. Various discussions with statutory consultees have been held, and all outstanding matters have now been agreed. It is stressed that the applicant, particularly as a local authority, has very similar interests and concerns as might be expressed by members of this committee, and is keen to stress that they will work with all affected parties both within Rugby and Coventry. It is appreciated that the proposed development will change the current agricultural use of the site, and this will have an impact on the current tenant. And the council, the applicant, is in discussion with the Mr. Hughes' agents to agree an appropriate and proportionate compensation. The applicant, however, disagrees that the planning application was incorrectly notified, and no other parties shared a similar complaint. We would also advise that a public event was held and that public comments have been received from the start of the application. At no time has any member of the public been disadvantaged with respect to the application. In the interest of complete transparency, the application was re-advertised and no further procedural concerns have been raised on that matter. The site has been carefully chosen and has a number of distinct advantages, namely, a grid connection point is available and is located in close proximity. It is well screened and located on suitable land for the development. It is fully compliant with government policy. Significant mitigation is proposed that will improve biodiversity in the area, and it accords with your declared climate emergency. Generating 30 megawatts, the equivalent of the power required for 7,650 houses per year, the proposed development will make a meaningful contribution to combating climate change in the Midlands. It is low risk, located in a suitable position, and is entirely reversible following the completion of its natural operational life. On behalf of the applicant, I hope that you will agree with your officer's report and recommendations and approve the application tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll just move over to the officer. Is there any points that have been picked up that you need to address?
Through you, Chair. I've just to clarify with the land grading, land defined as grade 1, 2 or 3A of the agricultural land classification is considered to be the most and best versatile land, which would be 32%, with the 68% being what you'd call lower quality agricultural land. That's all. Thank you, Chair.
We'll move over to the members for their. That's the wake-up call, I'm afraid. Right. Right, we'll let's move into the debate. I'm sure we've got lots of questions to ask of the officer, and lots of points for the councillors to make, considering the person's livelihood here. So, Councillor Mrs. Garcia.
Right. Well, I don't really. I'm finding this really difficult because obviously we all know that we need renewable energy. So, I do realise that we've got to bear that in mind. But I do get a bit sick of everybody just bunging things in the green belt and then saying that they've got a special circumstance. And I actually don't really see what the special circumstance is here. And when I've looked at the MPPF, it says here that there's 5 purposes to the green belt. It's to check unrestricted sprawl of a large built-up area. It's to prevent neighbouring towns merging into one another. It's to assist in safeguarding the countryside from encroachment. It's to preserve the setting and the special character of historic towns, and to assist in urban regeneration by encouraging the recycling of derelict and other urban land. And to me, this sort of tells me that this isn't the right place for this application, although obviously I do realise that we need renewable energy. I think inappropriate, as it says here, inappropriate development by definition harmful to the green belt shouldn't be approved except in very special circumstances, and I can't see what the very special circumstances. So that's my feeling, I'm afraid. But I'll listen to the rest of the debate before I wade in with my size sixes.
Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Chair. I'm the same as well because I've got a 9-year-old daughter and future climate change and things like that. And to be honest with you, that's what I'm looking at. I'm still a bit confused regarding the grading because we don't know what that grading that field is. It could be a 3A field and it still could be yielding. So to be honest with you, that's a bit confusing on there. But another thing as well is we've got all these warehouses, look at Junction 1 retail or retailers. If we've run out of solar panels we can put on them sort of buildings, I think I could really understand we would put it in this area. And I have seen some, and I know there's one on the M5 down towards Devon. I have seen them, and I haven't got no problem with them. But the problem is there's also another issue. Coventry haven't improved it yet. There's no date for it or what's going on. So we could do what we want here, but it makes a difference. Depends on what Coventry do. So we're in limbo anyway. So until they make a decision, we can't really make a decision either, can we? So for me, it's if there's no space, all the warehousing had solar panels, all the retail solar panels, then I think I'll be going towards say yes, I'll be going for it. But what Belinda said regarding the green belt and things like that, I don't see it's a viable place to put it, and there's potential there to grow crops. So I'll listen to everyone else, but that's my feelings at the moment.
Any further speakers? Councillor Sanderson.
I appreciate it is difficult for members, but for those of us who've been on this committee for some time, we can well remember sui generis applications in open countryside on many occasions where the economic benefits were felt to be more value than the open countryside which was there. But this is a difficult one because we don't have a large part in this proposal for a solar array. It's a relatively small site compared to the other one. So that's sort of where I say it. The officer did give me some encouragement with what really would come back from Warwickshire Ecology Unit, that they would actually meet the requirements for biodiversity net gain. And that can be done in different ways on these sites. But I say I would have been happy if he'd said that we're going to do a lot more hedgerow planting and a lot more tree planting along the site. Then perhaps he was a bit too even-handed on that. But I think we're all 50-50 on this, Chair. It's not very clear.
Just to come back, I understand the point from Councillor Harrington. There's two applications to be decided, the one at Coventry, the one at Rugby. Whether we followed them or they followed us, we have to make a decision on it. I think, like I said, is whether both approve, both refuse, or one approves and one refuses, it's going to have a kind of a bearing on what happens. But I think, like I say, the application is before us. We need to make a decision. In terms of your point as well, I'd just like to say in paragraph 163 of the NPPF, it talks about sustainable and renewable energy, and it says it should be approved if it can demonstrate very special circumstances. Obviously, there's a climate emergency. In terms of where it's got to go, again, I understand that there's buildings and brownfield sites and stuff, but this is an area that's under somebody's control. They've put the application in. It's within close proximity to a national grid point. So, like you say, this is the application in front of us. I think the other thing as well is, in terms of, and a good indicator is, this is government policy to say if you can provide special circumstances, which has followed very many solar farms that have come in. They've gone to the planning case work unit and they've been approved. So that's by the Secretary of State. The thing I think with it as well is the NPPF was renewed 6 weeks ago. That that policy stays in. It hasn't been removed, so I think there's still a positive from the government to build these solar farms. So I think that's quite a good indicator with the direction the government's going. So thank you, Chair.
Councillor Becky Mowdis.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, struggling like everybody else, I think, in the room. It's a very emotive one, hearing the stories, especially of the tenant, which I know we're not, it's not a material consideration, but we're obviously being made aware of it. And that you know, creates some emotion. I think, for me personally, I think if we were considering the whole site, that would be a very different story. But just basing it on this Rugby site, this smaller site, I'm kind of veering more towards Councillor Sanderson. We've got a climate emergency. And but this is the site that we're looking at now, near to the grid. So yeah, but I appreciate the points that have been made, and it is it's a really difficult one. It's not an easy decision.
Just through you, Chair, just to assist members, really, just to say that you're right. I mean, obviously, it is very emotive, but that isn't... Sorry, can you hear me now? Yeah, I just really wanted to give you the sort of the legal basis of it, really, is that one, yes, even though it is emotive, obviously, that is a private matter in terms of the current tenant. So that's not something from a public perspective that members can take into account, unfortunately, when they're looking at this. It's purely on, obviously, planning guidance and policy and legislation, as you know. And also, just to bring Councillor Garcia's point on, where you're saying, well, we've got lots of brownfield sites. We are just considering this application on it, and that wouldn't be a reason. That would be not to approve it, saying that we've got there is alternative options. So just to help members, I'm giving you that advice. Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify, because I know it was mentioned by a speaker about the consultation period. Did we go through the whole consultation process? I know we had... Was it open to the public? The reason I'm asking this, because I know we had, from the local access forum, we had something came through to us all as councillors after the consultation period. And these sort of things do throw up concerns, because you then hear and you think, have they had a chance to voice their opinions? And it just, I think that's why some of us in this room now are a bit unsure, because it feels like, have we heard everything in that respect? So.
Through you, Chair. So the application process is that it's a major planning application, so it needs to go into the newspaper. Letters need to be sent to nearby neighbouring properties, and also site notices need to be put up. So all that was followed. In terms of how Coventry do it, it's a little bit different to us. They notify their neighbours and consultees of when the planning committee is, whereas we rely on people to look at the website, and that's how we operate as Rugby. So everything was followed to the procedure.
While we're just to put a bit more into the mixing pot, while we're looking at the picture on the screens at the moment, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's a field of wheat growing there. Is that something that I'm recognising, even with my glasses on? Yeah, and if we can go back through the slides and to where we've got a picture of the a colour picture of the. Yep, a colour picture of the panels. Yeah. No, it actually shows a picture of the grass underneath. So if you're looking very, very closely at the underneath those panels, you'll see that there's no grass growing underneath them. Nothing at all. It's soil underneath them because the grass dies. Can you see that? Yeah. Right. So that's what will happen over a long period of time. There won't be any grass growing underneath them. It's there. That's the evidence. Now, if you consider food, this is something for you to think about. If you consider food and what can be produced on a field of wheat, going back to the good old days in the 1960s, early 70s, you might get 2.5 tonnes to the acre. But now you get 3.5 to 4 tonnes of the acre. So bearing in mind that the objector has stated that he's got grade 3A on 67% of his land, that could produce quite a number of loaves of bread, millions of loaves of bread. So that's what might be losing out. That's something to consider, the loss of food production. So that's just something else to think about. Now we've got further speakers.
I'm going to go batting straight in. I feel that once these green belt sites have gone, they've gone. And whilst I'm great at saying when it's for families and things like that, they should have somewhere to live, I absolutely don't think that I can support this application. I feel that it doesn't give us any special circumstances at all as to why that should go into the green belt. I think, although I'm not allowed to say it, there are other sites and there are rooftops, etc., etc., for a solar farm, and that is exactly what we should be doing. And so, therefore, I am going to move this against the office's recommendation, I'm sorry to say, for refusal.
I second that.
Councillor Carradine, you'll second that.
I'll second your thing.
Obviously, I'll have to go through the chair and just give you notice that obviously if we're moving it for refusal, we do have to make any grounds that you're, or any refusal notice have got to be on material planning grounds.
This is going to
You're okay with that one?
So one of the reasons is you'd consider it not to be very special circumstances, and the loss of the green belt. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Have we got any further speakers on that?
Could we have the officer's advice on that?
Oh, you're clarifying what I've said, are you? Okay. Just trying to strengthen my argument a bit.
Chair, if I can just clarify, what I want to know is the grant substantive enough to be upheld when this gets to the unit?
Members, as you're all aware, you're not to take this in. I mean, obviously, costs aren't something that you can take into account on appeal costs, but obviously there is. I can give you the notice to say that if you've got your professional officer telling you that this is something that should be granted, then obviously there is more of a chance that it would be unreasonable to refuse it, because you've got professional advice and all of the statutory consultees saying that it is the right location and where you can have it. But again, costs aren't something, as I say.
Sure, it wasn't on costs, it's whether the grant was substantive enough to be merited as a reasonable ground for refusal.
Yeah, well, very special circumstances. Yeah.
Yes, through you, Chair. There's obviously, as mentioned in the officer report, paragraphs with reference to the green belt and whether very special circumstances have been demonstrated. This committee has dabbled with that many times with weighing up that balance. So, of course, what I'm hearing from well, at the moment is what's before us is that not very special circumstances have not been demonstrated for this development. That seems to be the main reason for refusal. Well, yeah, and obviously it was seconded by Councillor Kadira as well. Obviously there is a policy on renewable energy in the local plan, policy SDC 8, but obviously that primarily focuses on solar farms in connection with best and most versatile agricultural land. Obviously a survey has been done. We've had that report. The percentages based on that report are in the officer's report about why they consider the percent, what percentage is on the best and most versatile land and what isn't. But obviously, that's clear for members to make that decision. In terms, obviously, of the green belt, then obviously that is the balancing exercise, and that is what members have to weigh up with this application, as with many, many applications we get in a connection with the green belt. So obviously, what you're saying, or actually, you obviously two councillors so far have talked about, is, the very special circumstances haven't been demonstrated, and that's obviously we can tie to the MPPF in terms of a reason for refusal, if that's members are minded to go down that route. Obviously, it is detailed in the report what those special circumstances are in terms of obviously climate emergency, not just obviously this council, but many others have obviously declared. And obviously, trying to meet the government's own agenda for, reducing carbon.
Councillor Garcia, if we can make any comments regarding this with a live microphone, so that it's all recorded. Okay.
Obviously we've got a motion that's been put forward and seconded, and then we've got a reason for refusal on there's no very special circumstances have been I'm very sorry, can you hear me now? I wonder if is that better? Yeah. Well, I was just okay, just to say we've had a motion to go against officer's recommendation. That has been seconded. We have a reason for refusal that very special circumstances haven't been demonstrated. So that was just to make that point so that people know where we are now. And I'll urge you to the chair to see if he moves for the vote.
Okay, we've got no further debate or no further recommendation. Councillor Mrs. Garcia.
Just checking.
Becky Mowdis, sorry.
Sorry, just to check. So the land was graded by the ALC, the Agricultural Land Classification. That's what's used to grade the land. Who carried that grading out? Because I feel that we've got a discrepancy. We've heard two different figures. So if we could get some clarification on that, I think that might help.
Through you, Chair. I'm not entirely sure who the report was done by, but the Agricultural Land Classification Report has been carried out. To clarify it then, so the best and most versatile land is grade 3A, which is 32% of the land. The 68% of the land would be classed as lower quality agricultural land. Okay, so however, as I said before, that this wouldn't stop it. If it was on the best and most versatile land, it could still go ahead if there was no other sites available. So I don't know if that helps. I think in terms of you say about the very special circumstances, I think the government's declared a climate emergency, Rugby's declared a climate emergency. We need to have like renewable energy. There are this is a site that's come forward. That's the very special circumstances. In terms of biodiversity, net gain, that's been accounted for. Things like landscaping's been accounted for. That's been demonstrated. So that's what would be considered to be the very special circumstances. I don't know if that helps as well.
Yeah, just for you, Chair, just to confirm, my understanding is that the agricultural classification report was done by a firm of chartered surveyors, and that report was submitted by the applicant, i.e. Coventry City Council. Obviously, they are obviously a firm, as I say, of chartered surveyors. They'll have to abide by their own code of conduct. So obviously that information in there, is obviously based on their findings. We have nothing to dispute that, and we will take that on as face value. But as I said, they are, chartered. It says they're a chartered surveying company that have actually done it. So, we have to understand that is correct information.
Have we got any further speakers or recommendations? Or Councillor Eve Hassel.
I am concerned about the loss of agricultural land, particularly bearing in mind the possibility of disruption to imports with the world situation. And although I realise only 32% is top grade, it seems to me that the whole site is being used for production of food at the moment. So I do have a great concern about that.
In that case, Councillor Sanders, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I appreciate it. It is a very difficult case for us to consider. Nobody wants to be in Putin's pocket in terms of future energy needs. But saying that, I think this part of the proposal by Coventry City Council does go into Warwickshire, into Rugby, and my concern is that there doesn't seem to be much thought about the overall impact. Again, it is a concern. I'm well aware that such sites where there have been solar arrays is that they can be underplanted with plants. You can get biodiversity gain. It can be grazing sheep can quite easily, or goats can quite actively use the land. So again, it depends on how it is planted and how much the ecology unit works with the council to deliver this project. But I think it's just we just don't feel comfortable about this one. I'm glad we've clarified that the ground is sufficiently substantive as to be able to be supported by our officers at any future discussions with the unit. But this very small chunk. This is a very small site compared to the rest of the site. And I think possibly they need to sort out the rest of the site before they go on to this one.
First comments. Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we're all struggling tonight to make a decision on this because there's a lot of things going on. Can we defer this until Coventry City Council make a decision, and also we get a better report for what's going to happen with biodiversity, because there seems to be too much in the air what's going on. Obviously, there's other bits and pieces as well, but at the moment, Coventry City Council haven't even got a date for a meeting when it's going to be accepted or not, and also is the biodiversity going to be better, and how the land's going to be landscaped. There's lots of questions there that hasn't been answered tonight. So is it a best thing to defer it until we get more information?
through you, Chair. Can everybody hear me? Just to confirm, obviously we're looking at the planning of this particular site. So obviously, though I can't see that as being a bona fide reason for deferral. However, you do elaborate on wanting more information in terms of ecology and biodiversity and things like that, which is a material consideration. So that would certainly be a member's gift to be able to do it from that perspective. However, just to remind members, we do have a motion that is on the table at the moment that we do need to take first before we can take any, or that would be the first motion that we would have to take first, because it's been seconded.
Councillor Sanderson, did you?
Yeah, I quite happily support a deferment.
Okay, well, I'm going to go back to the proposer and seconder.
You've got
Councillor Wood, do you want to speak first?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm in agreement with Councillor Sanderson about a deferment here, because I think whilst I think the protection of the green belt is really important, and I think if we refuse the application and then we've refused it for the wrong, or it's not supportive enough, I think that will just come back. I think if we defer, I think there's a lot of questions we've got here about the quality of the land. I think actually it would probably be good to have a site visit as well as councillors, because especially seeing like the hedges and things like that, because we talk about the visibility from the road. I know experts have looked at this, but we haven't, and I support the deferment. I'd like to second that with a site visit. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so we've had a proposer and a seconder for deferral. Now, will the proposer and the seconder refusal withdraw those? And the seconder?
Yes, Chair. We'll withdraw it.
Okay, so the proposer and the seconder have volunteered to withdraw their proposal for refusal, and we've had a proposer and a seconder for deferral and a site visit. So, with a site visit.
We do need
with the information.
I think we've reached a consensus, Chair.
Again, just through you, Chair, just to be very clear so that the officers know the reasons why we're deferring, because obviously when it comes back to committee, that will be what members will be discussing, and only that. So I think it's very clear at this point that we do know what we're deferring on, so we can get that information for members for the next time.
Okay, in that case then we'll move to the vote for...
We need to know why we're just get that clarified.
Yeah, to get that clarified. Yep.
So I think because Councillor Sanderson made the...
You made the point.
Yeah, I think members expressed concerns in terms of both the ecological and agricultural use of the land.
Okay, have we got that? Okay, so in that case then we will move to the vote for a deferral. All those in favour, please show.
Yeah, still in. I have a point to raise, Chair.
Oh, well, I don't know whether you got there in time. Sorry. Did you want to say something first?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Still, we haven't included the necessity to put this project in a green belt. That is also important to be added in the deferment. Because what is the absolute necessary for us to put in a little left green belt?
And that was a bit of a false start on the last vote, so here we go again.
Yes.
All those in favour of deferral, please show. And a site visit, yes. And that looks unanimous to me.
So that's
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Now going to have a comfort break, so I'm told, for a couple of minutes.
That's all right.
Yeah, okay. Well, welcome back to this second half of this planning meeting, the 7th of February 2024. We'll move on to Callum, who's going to present on 263A Rugby Road, Binley Woods.
Thank you. /1075 at 263A Rugby Road. It's a change of use from a hair salon to a restaurant / hot food takeaway. It's here in front of you today because it received over 15 objections or neighbour objections. So this is here on the aerial view. It's located about in the centre of Rugby Road, running through Binley Woods. It's a residential area with some commercial, some shops and restaurants nearby. So these are the site images. As you can see, it's clearly a hairdresser's currently. It's a single-storey building with a relatively small footprint. This is the existing and proposed site plan. So as you can see, there's not actually much changes proposed. There's going to be the addition of some secure cycle storage, bin storage, and then visitor bike storage. But other than that, there's not many changes towards the site plan. In terms of the changes to the actual building, there's going to be very limited changes. The majority of the changes will be at the front. As you can see, the front window's going to turn into doors, and then the doorway is going to be boarded up. On the side elevations, you can see that there's no changes for the time being. One of the conditions that's been recommended by Environmental Health is for flues, so this is subject to change, but it will be relatively minor for ventilation and such. So here you can see the existing and proposed floor plans. You can see on the left-hand side the existing plan, layout of a hairdresser's, and then on the right there's the takeaway layout. As you can see, there's quite a large proportion of the buildings taken up by the kitchen, with probably just under a third of it being used as the waiting area. In terms of consultation responses, Warwickshire County Council Highways, they came back with no objection, no conditions, no informatives, whereas Environmental Health, they came back with no objection subject to a number of conditions and informatives. We'll discuss them later. The Parish Council brought up an objection with a number of points, and then obviously there was the 16 objections from the neighbours. So here are the majority of the concerns raised. I've put next to them what conditions we've recommended to ensure that they're dealt with. Some of the main concerns from people were in terms of increased noise. Environmental Health have recommended a condition to ensure that the noise levels are acceptable. Increased odours. Once again, Environmental Health have suggested a condition to reduce the odours and ensure that they're at a reasonable level. There's concerns raised about litter. A litter plan's been recommended to ensure that the area's kept nicely. And then the next point, one of the next points was parking concerns. So as I said about the space inside the building for the seating area, usually we would expect 13 spaces to be required for the size of the building, whereas there's been 7 spaces provided. If we were to just consider it off of the actual serving size, we would only need 5 spaces, and we've got cycle storage on top of that. So the key considerations for this application are the principle of development. It's located within Binley Woods, which is a main rural settlement, which is the second most sustainable location in the borough. In terms of character and design, as you saw previously, there's limited changes to the design of the building. The changes won't create a detrimental effect on the street scene. With highways considerations, as I said, they were consulted and they raised no concerns. They've said that the visibility is acceptable for the speeds of the road that will be joining, and that there's been no accidents with the access in the past 5 years. Environmental Health, they've raised no objection subject to conditions. The conditions, like I stated earlier, There's odour control, noise control, ventilation conditions, as well as conditions limiting the hours that deliveries of stock can be done, as well as when bin collections can be done. And then impact on residential amenity. Due to the scale of the proposal, there'll be a limited effect on residential amenity. There's no changes to the property that would have a negative impact on the privacy of neighbouring properties. So on that, on planning balance, the site, it's located in the second most sustainable site in the borough. The external alterations are going to not have a significant impact on the character or appearance of the area. The proposals wouldn't affect the amenities of the surrounding properties, and it would not have detrimental impacts on the highway. Therefore, it has complied with the local plan and the MPPF. The recommendation is the application is to be approved. And then just finally, there's been some condition amendments. Some of these might not have shown up in the addendum as they were made very late. So for condition 4, it's been changed to provide better clarity. We've changed it from a 12-hour clock to a 24-hour clock. And then on condition 10, once again, it's been changed from a 12-hour clock to a 24-hour clock, and the word should has been changed to shall to ensure that it is enforceable. Thank you.
Right, thanks for that presentation, Callum. Have we got any points of clarification to the officer? Councillor Sanderson?
Yeah, it's the parking issue that's a concern, given that our policies, it is 16 parking spaces, isn't it, for a takeaway? Yeah, I just move on from that. Now, a lot of, if it was just a restaurant, I wouldn't have a problem, but it has a restaurant and a takeaway, which means you could have a significant number of movements from companies like Uber and Just Eat, and what's the other one, the kangaroo one? Yes, you could a lot of organisation, lots of vehicular movements from vehicles servicing the takeaway industry. So do you, taking that into consideration, do you feel that 7 parking spaces is still adequate? I mean, is there a double yellow line to stop them parking on the road?
Through you, Chair. So I'm not 100% sure on the traffic regulation orders in the area. Warwickshire County Council highways haven't raised any concerns with the parking that's being provided. In terms of Deliveroo and stuff like that, the idea is generally they're quite quick, so they'll be in and out. Another issue with that is if we were to look at the parking and compare it to some of the other uses they could change to within the same use class, there's a higher likelihood that people would be parked there for a lot longer and there may be more cars there anyway.
Sorry,
Mrs. Desea. Yeah.
I'm sure I'm being completely thick, but it says collections or delivery, excluding customers or home deliveries, can't be made between 6 and 8 o'clock at night. What's that about then? But it's all right at 9 o'clock then, or 10 o'clock, is it?
Just for a point of clarification.
Well, it doesn't say 8 a.m. It says 1800 hours to 2000.
Yeah, just as a point of clarification, that was part of the amendments. That was an error on my end. That should be 0800. So normal.
8 in the morning.
So normal deliveries for stock and stuff can't be delivered from 6 p.m. until 8 a.m. to ensure that there's no traffic on the road or limited traffic on the road for lorries, and so it won't affect the neighbouring properties.
Well, I feel that's a little bit, having had a pub myself, often when we used to put orders in, they would tip up about 7 o'clock at night. You know, you can't stop somebody, if you're giving them the permission, you can't stop somebody then having deliveries, can you? To make sure his business works. I mean, at least make it set between 7 and 8 or something like that, so at least they can deliver, still have the deliveries.
Yeah, through you, Chair, it specifically excludes customers or home deliveries. So I understand this is to do with concerns about, saying, lorries being on site, perhaps dropping off bulk goods at peak times, like tea time, when people are wanting to park there. So you've not got a lorry on site parking across, say, 3 or 4 parking spaces. So actually, if you...
I completely understand what you're saying.
So the condition specifically does say excluding customers or home deliveries. So therefore, customers and deliveries can take place between...
Yeah, but that's no good them taking place if they haven't got the stock to serve it.
Yeah, so that was the main concern, I think, was that the stock comes at other times outside of the main time when it would actually be in use.
Any further... Councillor Edwards, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to clarify a bit further about these objections the neighbours have had, please.
Would you like to go through just the actual objections in general, or so?
Yeah, a particular theme that's coming through. Could you just sort of...
Yeah, of course. So the most prevalent ones were highway safety concerns. A lot of people raised objections to it because, if I go back quickly, a number of people have pointed out that Woodlands Road, this junction here, is relatively busy. Warwickshire County Council have came back and said they have no concerns with that junction, so we don't have any concerns with it. Another consistent point was litter, which is why we've suggested this litter condition. Another one was the increase in smell. We've got an odour condition. It's all standard environmental health conditions, as well as noise, and that, once again, we've got a noise condition there as well.
Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Chair. Is there anything about the sign itself? Because if you look at if you go back to the picture of the hairdressers itself, and I've driven past this numerous times, it's quite, it's not glaring out. You're not going to get a big one like fried chicken. It's like massive, things like that. That's what I'm trying to say, because at the end of the day, you need to have a look at what's there at the moment. So is there any conditions for this?
So that would have to come in for a separate application. So that would come in under advertisement consent when and if they apply for it.
From the Chair, the Parish Council had raised 6 concerns. Have you adequately addressed all those, do you think?
Through you, Chair. I would like to hope so. I have raised the points in this list of concerns. A couple of them I would say weren't related to the application. So there was concerns over the increase of light at the property, creating unnecessary light pollution. The application doesn't appear to increase any lighting. They did note about the loss of privacy for the neighbouring property, but once again, there's no changes to the building to make a change of loss of privacy. And then the points raised by the Parish Council were the ones.
Thanks for that. Right, in that case then, shall we move into the debate? Any speakers? Councillor Mrs Garcia.
Thank you very much. Oh, I'd hate you not to be able to hear me. Right. I think that I'm just going to back straight in, and I'm going to vote with the officer for approval on this. I feel that we should be taking a positive approach to help people diversify with the businesses, and as you've adequately pointed out, there's absolutely no change to the street scene really. There is parking, it complies with our development plan, and actually really they could change it for anything under a Class C without planning permission. So therefore I'm going to vote for this to go for approval. Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually just going to go straight in as well and second for approval, because I think whilst I appreciate residents' concerns, I don't think there's anything there that's actually that would warrant refusal. So yeah, and I appreciate that a business keeping running, change of use, like you say, it's already been covered. So yeah, I'm happy to second approval.
Got any further speakers? Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. Just seeing the picture, it does look very close to the neighbouring house, and I've got to think in my mind, if I imagined that to be where I was living and there were lots of people coming and going to 11 o'clock at night. I accept that there's a hairdresser there at the moment, but I think footfall will increase onto a property like that for a takeaway. So I'm a bit reluctant at this stage to vote in favour because of the privacy concerns, which I know you say are no legitimate privacy concerns, but from the neighbour's point of view, I can actually see that there are.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite normal for Warwickshire County Councils and never ever to see a problem anywhere. So I take whatever they say with a very big pinch of salt. Extraction and ventilation is not a minor problem. It can have quite an impact on a neighbouring property with regard to the noise that the ventilation equipment generates to that property next door. So again, it's not just that I want to see good ventilation and extraction equipment. I want to make sure the decibel level is sufficiently low, it will not affect the neighbouring property. In terms of the highway conditions, I can see an awful lot of Uber men and Just Eat men parking in that road just across from it, because it's such a convenient stop for them.
Through you, Chair. So just to clarify about the noise point, there is a standard condition by Environmental Health that's been included for noise. What they do is they take the level of the noise currently, and then they'll set a boundary and say it can't be any higher than this after you've included all the extraction systems and stuff like that. So the noise shouldn't be too big of a concern. And obviously, if there's existing TROs, there's not much more we can do to enforce it. It is unfortunately up to the council to enforce it.
Okay, have we got any further speakers? No? Okay, in that case we've got a proposer and a seconder for approval. We'll put that to the vote. Now, all those in favour, please show. And those against, please show.
So that must have been 9. 9, sorry.
That was 9 for and 2 against. So that's, to clarify, that has been approved. Right, we'll move on down the agenda. The next item is advance notice of site visits, and we've already done one tonight, haven't we? Yeah.
I have no further to add, Chair.
The nature of the site that we're going to, do you think it'd be worth taking the minibus?
Now, I thought, in the interest of the climate, I thought we were either going to walk or cycle.
A serious point. It's a very sort of narrow area to get into in terms of travel. One minibus with us on the minibus will be easier than trying to get 6 or 7 or 8 cars down there.
Well, if we had plenty of time on our side, we could actually go down the canal. Right, we're on agenda item number 6, and that is the diversion of the footpath at the most northern hamlet in the Borough of Rugby at Stretton Baskerville.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a presentation to actually confirm an order for a diversion of a footpath. Members may recall that a hybrid planning application back in last year actually was brought before committee and was then determined and approved. So there's a footpath that crosses the actual site, and the existing footpath follows this line here. And the proposed now is to actually divert this footpath along this route here. So as mentioned, the hybrid application was approved for works for and outline permission for an erection of an industrial building, classes B2 and B8, with ancillary offices, and there was a full permission Class 8 at Padge Hall off the A5 in Stretton Baskerville. As I mentioned, part of the development requires the diversion of the footpath. So concurrently with the application, they then obviously submitted an order for the diversion. This was made and advertised accordingly, and the effect is then to stop up part of that footpath as shown on the previous plan and create a new route. No objections have been received, so therefore the recommendation is that committee are asked to confirm the path order unopposed. Thank you, Chair.
From the Chair, have we got a seconder for that? Councillor Mrs Garcia, and seconded that. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. Move on to agenda item number 7. Planning appeals update. And Richard again, I think. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, there's been quite an update on appeals that we have actually received back before the agenda was published. So I won't dwell on those. But Appendix B, at the time the agenda was published, had a list of appeals that were outstanding, but some of these we've actually had decisions on now. So the first one is Vorings Foss in Broadwell. That appeal was actually allowed. The inspector felt that the extension wasn't harmful to the character and appearance of the area or the dwelling, and it wouldn't have an overbearing impact on the neighbour. The next appeal decision is at 2 Hoots Farm at Bramcote. The inspector also allowed that appeal. The inspector felt that although the site was isolated and it placed reliance on private the immediate setting, so the inspector allowed that appeal. We've also had the appeal decision for the shoulder of Mutton Pub at Granborough. That was for a holiday let in the grounds as far as a double-decker bus. The inspector dismissed that appeal. The inspector felt that it did harm the setting of the listed building. It would have an adverse impact on flooding and also have an adverse impact on the character and appearance of the area. I think, as probably members know, in terms of Coventry Stadium, that appeal was dismissed. The inspector felt that the stadium was not surplus to requirements, and the benefits and alternative provision did not outweigh the loss of the facility. We've also had the appeal decision for 52 Heather Road, Binley Woods. That appeal was dismissed by the inspectorate. The inspectorate found that it did detract from the street scene in the area, although it would not harm the living condition of neighbours. And finally, we've had a decision of the Crown Inn, Newbold, for 2 dwellings. The inspectorate dismissed that appeal because the inspectorate felt that it would harm the living conditions of neighbours and future residents. There would be an adverse impact on highway safety, and it would harm the character and appearance of the area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments on the appeals update? I just want to make the comment on the Coventry Stadium. the fact that it was probably the
Quick,
most...
quicker we have a policy on stadia, the better.
That it's certainly in my time of 19 years of sitting on this committee, that one has attracted a lot of attention, thousands of people interested in that. And it's also attracted attention from the media, from a national newspaper, the Daily Mail, and of course has been mentioned in the Houses of Parliament by the Prime Minister himself. So we're interested in to keep an eye on that one. The other one I wanted to just ask about, which I didn't ask at the briefing, was the 39 Park Road, where the HMO was allowed by the inspector and it was refused at committee or by officer.
Yes, the inspector did allow that appeal, whilst the inspector felt that there was perhaps concerns raised about parking. The inspectorate basically said that residents obviously there would have to park further away, and whilst this was an inconvenience, they didn't felt that that was unacceptable on the living conditions of the people there or the local residents.
We all okay? We all recovered from that? Okay. No more questions on the appeals update? In that case, we'll move on to the next item, which is delegated decisions. We're all noted that? We're all okay? In that case, then, we'll move on to item 9, motion to exclude the public. Under Section 100A(4) of the Local Government's Finance Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following item on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of information defined in paragraph 2 of Schedule 12A of that Act. I'll move that from the Chair. There a seconder? And all those in favour? Okay.